Hello, in this video we're going to take a look at a mid-1960s Crestline era Gibson GA5T, otherwise known as a Skylark. What we're going to do in this video is, first of all, this is in as-found condition, so really nothing's been done to it. I don't know really what state of repair it's in. We're obviously missing a handle right off the bat. We're also missing a knob here. So we're going to have to track those things down. But first things first, what we're going to do is probably open this thing up slowly, see what we've gotten ourselves into here, and kind of go from there. If that sounds like something you'd be interested in, stick around and we'll get into it. Okay, before we open this thing up, let's take a look at the front panel under some better light conditions here. We can see it's pretty grimy. It looks like it hasn't been cleaned in forever, and that's caused it to begin to pit in places. A lot of this can be cleaned off, but a lot of this will not clean off. Like right here, you can see some pitting. Here is the GA5T logo still intact, and the Crestline logo with the little. I've always never paid a whole lot of close attention to the Crestline logo, but it looks like it's a little, what is that, a duck or something? Strange. A duck sitting on top of a crescent moon with two other crescent moons, perhaps. And there's like a knight on top of it. Funny. I've never really paid much. I've owned a ton of these amps and never really paid a whole lot of attention to what's actually on the crest in the Crestline amp until now. But here you can see most of the lettering is still intact, and it looks like it might clean up fairly well. On-off is there. Gibson Electronics division of Gibson Incorporated, Kalamazoo, Michigan. That's all there. Made in USA. 50-60 cycles. Got some missing lettering there and there, but that's no huge deal. 1 amp fuse is still visible. That fuse holder is obviously replaced, and it's dangling. Who knows the state of that? This has obviously been out before because the on-off position is wrong. Frequency is still there. Let's see, the off. Yep, switch does work. Loudness is still visible. And actually this says Skylark Tremolo. So that's barely still visible. We also have a serial number here, which I don't know if is going to be visible in this video or not. Yeah, there we go. 754521. So if you're keeping count at home, you can start to compile a list of Gibson serial numbers by some of the ones that I've presented in other videos, as well as this one. You can add that to the list. And one of these days I may actually do that. I've owned enough Gibson amplifiers at this point, I can probably start to apply them to some sort of timeline. But here we can see also mic or instrument still visible on the lettering. 1 and 2 still nice and crisp. You know, we do have, again, a lot of pitting here, and a lot of this is not going to come off. But we'll do our best to get some polish and polish around the lettering and see what kind of good we can do by cleaning all this up. But yeah, let's go ahead and open the thing up and see what we've gotten ourselves into. Once again, we're going to have to come up with a handle, but I think I have a solution already for that. I have a handle that came in a big lot of other things already on hand, and this one seems like it's pretty supple, still in good shape. I will treat this handle with some lotion to make it more pliable and flexible, make sure it doesn't dry rot in quick order on us, and I think that's going to do as far as the handle goes. Yeah, that's going to be about perfect, I believe, for the handle. So don't have to buy a handle. That's excellent. One less thing. I think I have this in the back, but we're going to take a look and see what's wrong with it too. And one other thing we will notice is that the style of grill cloth that we see on here, this is kind of the, if I remember correctly, this is the middle style of grill cloth. In other words, they had a style of grill cloth they were using on their amps before this that was a little more brown, and then after this it was a different color. But I think this is the middle style with kind of the wheat sort of grill. And you can see the video. I'll post a link up here to the GA19 RVT comparison that I made, and that's a good video if you like Gibson amps. Check that one out as well. I'll put a link up here, but you can see a comparison of the various styles of grill cloth that Gibson was using in the 1960s, and that'll give us also a bit of a timeline for this, as will the covering that they used, which is kind of like a I guess it's vinyl, and it's kind of in a tree bark kind of style. So yeah, this isn't the latest style that they came out with, which was a black vinyl. This is kind of the earlier stuff. So that, gives us some sort of date reference on this already. As far as the grill cloth itself, it's not in bad shape. There's a little bit of fraying here, which isn't too bad, and a little bit there. A little tiny hole there. But overall, I mean, for what is this now, almost a 50-year-old, well, I guess it is a 50-year-old amp. It's not in bad condition. So let's turn it around and see what the condition is like on the inside. Well, it's always good to see the back door intact on an amplifier. A lot of times these would get, especially on one that's been monkeyed with, or that has problems. Usually these back doors, well, I say usually, a lot of times these back doors would be missing because someone had already tried to monkey with it and they took the back door off and misplaced it. I've had that happen more than a few times, so it's good to see a back door. Looks like we also have the original speaker poking out here. It does say Gibson on it, so that's good to see. Also inside, this is our knob for the front panel, but it's got a little problem. I don't know if you can see that or not. The little knurled holder portion of this is broken off, so we're going to have to glue this back on somehow. We'll repair that also. I'm not sure what those nuts go to. I'm sure it's some part of the amp. I'm sure we'll find out soon enough, but at least we do have the parts. The gentleman I got this from, I've gotten other things from him as well, and actually I bought this amp in a big lot of things from him, and he's a good owner, but I don't know what state he got it in, so that's kind of what I'm worried about. I do see one of the tube shields is rattling around loose in the cabinet, so that's not necessarily a good sign either. Looks like we might have I don't know if this is the original plug or not. I don't think it is. This is a replacement 2-prong, but it's going to have to go. Maybe it's not a replacement. That could be original. That could be. We've got some wires dangling loose here. We'll figure out where those are coming from and what they're going to. I'd say the speaker, because the chassis probably been out. But let's go ahead and disassemble this further and get this back door off and take the chassis out. Okay, here we are with the back door off this thing, and a few interesting things jump out at us right off the bat. First of all, we have the sort of obligatory chipboard back cover that we see on Gibson amps pretty much all the time. But what's odd about the Skylark here that we don't see on other Gibson amps are these two screws. They don't go all the way through. They're actually underneath, so they're factory underneath the covering. But I wondered what these might be for, and I thought, well, maybe they're for holding a reverb tank or something on a different model. But no, they didn't make. I don't think they made a Skylark RVT, so it couldn't be that, I don't think. But look, if we look here on the chassis, there's two holes here that these go into, and I guess that's supposed to help you guide. It's supposed to help guide you in putting this back door in correctly. So that's interesting. That's something I haven't seen on other Gibson amps from the 60s. The second thing we notice, again, this is the original speaker, but unfortunately, let me get this thing to focus. I don't know why, but it refuses to focus unless I tap it. Anyway, here is the expressly made for Gibson incorporated tag that we see on some of the amps. Not all of them had this sticker, just some of them. But we see it's covering up, annoyingly, it's covering up our speaker codes, so we can't really date the amp by speaker codes, so we'll have to look at other components. One component that I did find right off the bat, This is 1965, the first week of 1965. So this is very early 1965, and I'm pretty certain that is original. Yeah, you can see there that solder's pretty pretty original looking to me. So I'm pretty confident that's original. We can also date it on pots when we get the chassis out, but just looking this over right away, we can also see that this Astron multi-section capacitor was probably, this is not original either, I'm sure, because I mean definitely this tape is not factory. Maybe the capacitor came off and flopped around the cab and an owner did this tape. I guess that's possible, but it's more likely that this is a replacement. Our depth capacitor is still in place here. That Sprague, we can see it peeking in here. And what's funny, really funny about these Sprague Black Beauties and Bumblebee capacitors from the 50s and 60s is radio and TV people hate those. If you watch a lot of YouTube videos of people repairing radio and TV equipment and phono equipment and ham equipment and all that sort of thing, all those people hate these Spragues and they call them the worst caps ever made. And it's really funny that guitar people think that they're so great, because I've seen so many times where a tech working on a radio or other such equipment will go through and test all these Spragues, and they're just all bad, like every single one of them. Maybe in guitars they won't go bad as easily because in the guitar cavity itself, because there's very low, almost non-existent voltages there, so maybe they last longer. But in amplifiers, these Spragues are pretty ill-advised as far as the a lot of the hi-fi community people. Well, hi-fi not so much, but radio people, TV people, ham radio people, I believe, also dislike those greatly. Which that was really interesting to me, because you know how people, we guitarists are. And some of the audio files, I'm sure, also about Sprague, Black Beauty, and Bumblebee style caps. But just generally looking around in here so far, it's fairly dusty. Not too bad. I've seen a lot worse, and it looks fairly original as well. All these orange capacitors, those are correct for the period for Gibson amps. And we'll get in here a little further. Let's get this chassis out and see what else we see. One more quick thing I forgot to mention about the cab. In spite of the back door being chipboard, the rest of the cab is, as usual, really nice plywood. And I believe all this plywood is probably birch, if I had to guess. Looks like birch grain to me. And it looks well put together. I can't tell if it's finger jointed, but most of these cabinets are. Looks like down here that it probably is finger jointed, but just done so well that you can't tell it. So yeah, good cabinets on these. And the baffle too is easily removable. You have these little chucks here where you can unscrew and take the whole baffle out. So if you need to service the amplifier and disassemble it completely, and if you want to clean it or something, you can disassemble the whole thing, easily change speakers and so forth with just a few baffle screws. So that's also nice. Well, there were no screws holding the chassis in at all, and this is a front-loading chassis, so I'm pulling it out from the front. There were no screws at all holding it in, so I'm assuming those nuts that we saw in that baggie were from the screws to hold the chassis in. So yeah, that might actually be what that back door thing is for. I don't know. Maybe this is also so you can reach up in there and screw the chassis in. You put those nuts on there, which is weird. I mean, you would never, unless you knew that that's how this thing went together, you'd probably never figure that out. But I'm assuming that's what that is now that I think about it. These on the back door are here. They go in that hole, and you're supposed to reach up inside there and put the nuts on to disassemble it and take the chassis out of the front. So that's a weird thing. If you have a Skylark, try that and see if that gets it out. I think that's definitely going to be the issue as far as how to get these out. But yeah, So no screws holding the chassis in, so that tells me it's probably been worked on in the past, plus the speaker leads were disconnected. So let's go ahead and get this thing the rest of the way out of here. Okay, stupid me. After a couple seconds of wrangling around with the chassis, I realized that there's no way it's going to come out the front because we have it on kind of little rails here. The chassis itself is on these little wooden rails on both sides. So it can only slide straight out. You can't go up with it. So you can't really get all the chassis out without taking the baffle out anyway. So let's go ahead and extract the baffle first. And that'll allow us to get a little better look at everything anyway. So let's go ahead and take all these screws out for the baffle, and then we can get the chassis out. Okay, we've extracted the baffle from the cabinet. We have the chassis also extracted from the cabinet, and we can see the cabinet with nothing in it here. And here's the rails that the chassis slides in on. Good design to have the rails, but it's kind of a pain in the butt to have to take the entire baffle out to get the chassis out every time you want to service the amp. A couple things I noticed right off the bat. There's one little tiny tear in the speaker cone. Otherwise, it's beautiful. So I'm probably going to take the speaker off here and go ahead and address that with a little bit of a repair right there. What I usually do to repair speakers like this, I use a little dab of very thin hot glue. I'll get my hot glue gun and we'll show how to do that. I know a lot of people actually use the glue that you're supposed to use for speakers. They make a speaker glue, and some people come in here with like paper towels and slowly build it up and do all kinds of weird little things. But I found actually hot glue works very well because it's a very flexible glue. It doesn't dry and become brittle. It also wears very well over time, so it's going to last a long time. Silicone is also pretty good, but the beauty of hot glue is that you can actually, if you want to remove the glue at any point, you can actually just touch it with your iron and smooth it out. And you can smooth it more, and it allows you to kind of manipulate it, but that's not so with something like silicone. But yeah, let's take a look at the chassis here and look at the first of all look at the codes on these transformers. This is the power transformer, and it's a pretty small one, not that impressive in size. But sometimes these can make the best power transformers because they'll give you that sort of overloaded crunch. But here's our code, TF-5AF. That'll be the part number. Interesting, it doesn't begin with GA because a lot of other Gibson part numbers for their transformers begin with GA. This one begins with TF. 996. That'll be the manufacturer. 65 is 1965, the first week of 1965, so that jives with the cap that we saw a moment ago. This other transformer has a very similarly dated code. This one's 549 manufacturer though. TF, let's see, what is it? TF 18-01. 549. 1965, the 5th week of 1965. So this was made very early in 1965 and probably sold sometime in the first quarter of that year. The tubes appear to all be RCA from what I can tell so far. Rectifier tube is over here, and it is a should be a 6X4, I think. Yep, 6X4, and this is made by RCA. The power tubes are 6AQ5As, and these are the 7-pin equivalent to the 6V6 tube. So this should have this amp should kick some ass. Nice 10-inch speaker too. So yeah, we should be kicking some ass with this amp by the time we're done. The preamp tubes, I believe, both are 12AX7. They might still be 6EU7s. They are. This one's a GE also. It's a GE6EU7. So there's that one. This one's probably also a 6EU7. Yeah, that's a RCA. So I'd say these are all original tubes except for perhaps this one, which is a GE replacement. So yeah, with 6 EU7s, which are very much like a 12 AX7 in terms of amplification factor and performance, this should be a really snazzy, kick-ass little amplifier with two 6AQ5s. Those are great output tubes. Not enough amplifiers today, in my opinion, are being made with the 6AQ5As. They're a smaller profile than 6V6s, so they could be used in more applications than a 6V6 probably. And I just think they're underutilized. A great tube, and there's still a lot of them out there on the used market, so you can still find them really readily. I don't know if any new ones are being made, though. I'll have to research that. We can see the back lower panel here is chipboard as well, so that's the only other part that I see that is chipboard besides the back door. So yeah, let's turn the chassis over and see what else we can see. We'll take these tubes out first. Okay, here are the guts of the amp, and a couple of things that I notice right off is the presence of this little spray component. This will be probably one of those little multi-component jobs that contains the dreaded tone sucking network that was in Gibson amps. So we will probably end up bypassing this, I would imagine, in some way, or modifying it in some way. But that's on my radar right off the bat. That's probably going to go. I will leave it intact, probably on one leg, so it's still here if somebody ever wanted to undo the mod. But to get the most out of these Gibson amps, you probably already know if you've seen a lot of my videos. These are a big no-no. Everything else looks fairly okay. Let's see, there's a code over here on this. Is kind of hard to see. 1964. Let's see if we can see it on camera. Yeah, 1964, 44th week on that component. So yeah, everything's right there together. This is definitely new, and we suspected as much. But also, it did not have a fuse in it, so we will have to get a fuse in it and hook it up. So at some point, yeah, somebody came in here and removed this fuse holder, probably because someone had lost the cap. Maybe the amp had blown a fuse. They took it out, didn't have a fuse, and then they lost the cap, and that's why this amp never really got fixed. And it could be that they bypassed that fuse and then found out that something else was wrong. So first things first, I'm going to hook this thing up to a variac, and these are the little things that you pay attention to, because they can lead you to kind of suspect what might have been the problem with gear when you get it. If you see something like this, be suspicious of your transformer off the bat, because and just know that that's an unknown state, because there could be some things wrong, and that might be why they bypassed this to begin with. That might be why the previous owner, to me, when he got it, he probably put this in and started to do the service on this, and maybe he got far enough along to realize that he was going to also need this part too. I really don't know, and I don't think he really did either. He wasn't really sure either. So, but anyway, here are the things we're going to do. We're going to replace this power cord. We're going to wire this all up correctly. This will also give us an opportunity to put the fuse first. So when our new cord comes in, it'll go to the fuse first. It'll come out of the fuse and go through the switch on one side, and then go through the power transformer, probably to the light on the other side, and then on to the rest of the circuit, or on back to the return. We'll remove the death capacitor, probably put that Sprague in our stash of capacitors, just in case a rainy day comes and we need another bad Sprague capacitor, or in case I choose to do a fire sale on a lot of the Sprague capacitors I already have. This one, I'm actually suspecting this might be factory original. If the tape is not, the component might be, because the reason I say that, let's see, yeah, that's on there pretty well. But the reason I say that is because it looks the period for one, and secondly, all of the connections for this thing actually look pretty clean. I mean, really clean, like factory clean. You know, you notice how everything is really cleanly wrapped. Like this component is really cleanly wrapped in there, and so is this, and it doesn't look like it's been disturbed at any point. And also how cleanly wrapped it is over here as well. That's leading me to suspect that this is an original component, and somebody probably came along here and just added this tape. I mean, hell, I don't know. Maybe it is factory, but the tape, I'm guessing, was probably added later, and this is an original component. Just for giggles, we'll try the amp with this original component in place. If it works, if everything comes up and there's no noise whatsoever, I may just not replace it. I don't know. But while I'm in here, you know, the other part of me says I might as well go ahead and do it. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. But these are the things we know we're going to do. Replace the cord, wire in our fuse, take out the death cap. We'll also look at a schematic and see if what sort of little mods we can do, things that can be undone easily. But on Gibson amps, we all know, I'm sure by now, especially if you watch enough of my videos, they can be usually improved. So let's do that right now. Actually, let's get a schematic out and to take a look at it, and we'll see what sort of changes we might want to make. Okay, as with almost all Gibson amps from the 50s and 60s, a little bit of hunting is required in order to get the correct schematic, and even then you don't know whether or not you've got the complete correct one. You may or may not have. There may not even be a correct schematic for this exact amplifier. This looks like about as close as we have. You see we have a 6EU7, 6EU7, two 6AQ5s, and a 6X4, just like we see on our chassis. We have a TF5A-P transformer here, which looks correct. We also have a little output transformer here, so the tube location chart is all good. But when we look at the schematic here, where we would expect to see our tone sucking network, either in this sort of position up here, or in this sort of position over in here, we do not see a tone sucking network. So that tells me this is probably a slightly earlier version of the amplifier than what we have on the bench. Searching around the internet revealed several different iterations of the Skylark. Here is another one. I believe they called this one the white panel version. This one is from, I think, around 1966 or 7. But this one has a tube chart showing two 12AX7s, not only two 12AX7s, but also a 6BQ5 output, just one 6BQ5. So this was probably reduced quite a bit in wattage, or it definitely was. We've added 12AX7s where we had 6 EU7s. So this is completely different. Let's see what it looks like here, and yeah, sure enough, we have a tone sucking network right here. It's the infamous Gibson tone sucking network. Anytime you see these components in this configuration, you've got a little cap bypassing, and then and that's letting a lot of highs straight through, and then you've got another network here that's filtering off some bass. Yeah, this right here is just pretty much death to the tone. So this iteration of the amplifier had it. And let's see if we see anything. There's drawing number 1. I don't see any kind of date reference on this particular schematic. But here, let's look at yet another schematic. This one I found, and it was pretty trashy, so I cleaned it up in Photoshop, or well, the wife did, so much thanks to her for that. Otherwise this thing would have been almost illegible. But we've got pretty similar to the last one we just saw, with two 12AX7s, 6X4, and a 6BQ5 single-ended output. We also do see our infamous tone-sucking network here, but they have actually labeled the component Sprague 102C84. Let's see if that jives with what we actually see in the amp. Let's look up here. What is this? This is a Sprague 102C84. So that is the component. And inside this one component, as I've long suspected, and until now didn't really have confirmation for, exists a 500 picofarad capacitor, two 220K resistors, and a .005 cap to ground. So this one single component it constitutes the entire what I call tone-sucking network in Gibson amplifiers. So I've actually had earlier Gibson amplifiers where I guess they were experimenting with the tone-sucking networks that had all of this built out. And I guess at one stage they thought, hey, we'll just hire Sprague to make us a component that contains all of these things, so that they're much easier. It's much easier to build the amps. It takes less time. And I would say that's exactly what happened. Probably a representative from Gibson called up Sprague because they obviously we're already buying things from them anyway, and they said, hey, why don't we get together on this and make a component that contains all of these things that makes it a lot easier for us to build these amplifiers. And I'm sure they were happy to oblige because they sold a bunch of crap to Gibson. And I don't know, I would like to go back in time and just confront the engineers at Gibson and ask them what the hell they were thinking. Some of these amps, you know, the tone-sucking network doesn't absolutely kill the tone, but others it just really makes it impossible to get a good guitar sound and good signal through. So they're usually almost always best to remove those. I've never found a single instance where this network actually made a Gibson amp sound better. You know, some people swear by some of the stock Gibsons with these in there, but I think it's just because of, frankly, a little bit of ignorance, because you don't know the difference between how one of these amps can sound with and without it. You haven't A-B'd them, and you know, I have many times and many different amps. So, you know, in my experience, these need to go. So that's probably what we're going to do. But interestingly, you know, here's even another schematic. This is a fourth schematic that we've seen. And this is just from the 60s amps. And you wonder why Gibson didn't have, you know, any good continuity with their models. Well, this is why. They changed them every year or year and a half, and they constantly fiddled with stuff. This looks to me like this is a little bit closer to what we have on the bench with a 6EU7, and here's one 6C4 instead of a second 6EU7. We do still have the 6, well, this one actually has 6BQ5s instead of the 6AQ5s, and we're missing a rectifier tube, and instead we'll have solid state rectification in this one. So yeah, this is yet another vastly different Skylark. So I mean, that's why it's so difficult just to say, yeah, you know, go out and get a Gibson Skylark, man. Those are great amps. You know, because usually you can say, you know, go buy a Fender Deluxe, go buy a Tweed Deluxe. You know, it's going to sound great. Or go buy a Black Face Twin. It's going to sound great. You know, there's a point where CBS came along and changed them to the silver face ones and fiddled with some things, and you can say, you know, you stay away from the late silver face ones. The early ones are pretty good, but in Gibson's case, they changed their models so damn often. You can't really tell somebody, yeah, go out and buy a Skylark because it's going to sound great. Because you might have one Skylark that sounds awesome because it didn't have a tone sucking network of any kind, and then you might have you know, the next 10 might be terrible sounding or just, you know, uninspiring. But even this one, with the 6BQ5 outputs, it looks to me like had this tone-sucking network. And this one is actually dated. This one's dated November of 1965. So a little bit later on in 1965, they changed the Skylark yet again to the 6BQ5. So it looks to me like what we have is a transitional example between this amplifier which constitutes the earlier version of the Crestline with no tone sucking network, and this version from later 1965 in November, which has 6 BQ5 output tubes, a 6C4 no rectifier tube, and a tone sucking network. There's other things that are different as well, I can already tell. 68K input resistors, whereas on this one we have 100K. So I mean, this whole thing was just totally redesigned. I don't know if the designers just wanted job security, if they thought, you know, hey, if we just keep redesigning these amplifiers, we'll keep a job. I don't know if Gibson thought, you know, our amps aren't selling as good as Fender's, so what are we doing wrong? And then they go back to the drawing board every year or so, thinking that that's going to fix their problems, when really I think their problem had more to do with marketing than anything, and the fact that they kept changing their amps was probably doing them even more damage. So, you know, be consistent. I guess if you have a company, try some consistency. Don't throw your core customers for a loop with changing your designs all the time. Don't confuse your public. Have good marketing. Be consistent. Make good amplifiers. Pretty simple. And don't put in stupid tone sucking networks. First order of business, I'm getting this 3-prong cord on, and look at what was underneath the black tape. Look at what was being covered up there. I mean, there's no solder on that at all. That's just wires braided together and then covered with black tape. I mean, they thought they were dealing with speaker wire or something, I guess. And this is the mains. So yeah, never know what you'll find in one of these old amps. Okay, we have our new electrolytic capacitors in. There's one there. There's a couple more over here that we replaced. Here's where that original one was, and it was indeed the original one. It had the original retainer and everything around it, so I'm pretty confident it was probably the original one. And you can see also, you know, it's just I've cleaned this chassis up quite a bit. It was really dusty. I cleaned everything up, and before I even turn an amp on like this, I like to spray out all of the controls with contact cleaner. Work them a few times after I spray. Also spray the jacks. Also, this jack has a ground on it, which was bent all to hell, so I bent it back into shape so it makes connection. Clean the contacts in there as well. Ran my brush in and out of the jacks to clean those. On the other side of the chassis, I cleaned it up a little bit as well. Also sprayed out all of the, and you can see there, cleaned up the transformer quite a bit. Also sprayed out all of the sockets and worked those tubes in and out of the sockets to clean them a bit. So before I even turn the amp on, I've done all that work, and that's going to minimize any potential problems. Okay, I made a mistake here on this, and what happened is I wired this thing wrong, and it was giving me some false readings. It was reading as if the secondary of the transformer was bad because I wasn't getting any voltages over here. My pilot light was on, the switch worked, you know, obviously the fuse was working, and this side of the transformer was continuous, obviously, because the light wouldn't come on otherwise, and we had nothing over here. Well, the reason for that is because of the light. These lights are neon, and they cannot be used in series with the other things. They have to be across the line. Now, this schematic, the one that we determined was closest to the amp we actually have, does not even show a light. It shows a fuse, a switch, and even a depth capacitor, but no light. Now, if we look at some of the other schematics, the later ones, they do indicate the light, but the light is indicated where it's supposed to be, and that's across the primary winding of the transformer in parallel rather than in series. So, totally my fault. wired this thing wrong, so I'm going to wire that. I'm going to wire it just like this with the light in parallel, and that should take care of that problem. Okay, we have this thing fired up for the first time, and we've got up to 255 volts on the first node of the power rail here, and everything is good. Sounds pretty good. It's we got sound coming out of the speaker, pretty loud. The only thing I will say is that it's also pretty tinny. When we crank this thing up a little bit, it just has a kind of a, I mean, granted we're out on the bench here, but it has a little bit more of a piercing tone than I would like. It's very clear, but it doesn't have a whole lot of balls. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and modify it while I have everything open. I'm going to try to pretend that this is going to work out, because I'm pretty sure that removing that Sprague component is going to help out a lot. So let's go ahead and remove that and do something different there, and then check it out. Okay, what we have in this amp, here's our first 6 EU7, pin 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's see, hang on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is a plate, and out of this comes a coupling capacitor, which goes up here to the leg of the Sprague. So it's coming in the Sprague here. This middle leg is going to one leg of the volume control, and then to ground. The other leg is going over here to the other leg of the volume pot, and then out of the middle wiper of the volume pot comes a resistor back into the other triodes grid of the 6EU7. So what we're going to do here, and this is a very low value capacitor. This is a .0047, which would probably work, but it's not going to allow a lot of bass through. So we're going to basically move the cutoff point for bass and allow a little more bass through by going with something probably a .01 right here, or maybe even a .02. And that's going to allow some more bass through. We'll leave this resistor in, and essentially we'll come out and go to the leg of the pot, and then we will clip this out of here. Alright, we removed this Sprague tone sucking network and also this small value capacitor, and we've replaced it with this larger value capacitor here, which is a .02. And we've basically just tacked it in. Right now I've just got it tacked in temporarily just to check out the tone, and it's vastly improved. I can tell just by how we have it out here on the bench that we're way improved. Let's listen to it. There's more breakup, more balls, a lot more low end. I don't know about you, but I sure do enjoy watching Bob Ross in the background while I do work. We do have a couple more things we need to do to finish this up. We needed to repair the speaker. I will actually show how that was done in another video. After this video is uploaded, I will upload a video showing how that's done, a separate one, so that people who just want to know how to fix the speaker can get to that more easily. Now we had one more thing also to do. We need to get these brackets off of here that hold the handle, so that because there's really no way to get a new handle on there without taking these brackets off, and they are riveted. And this is usually a way you can tell if these if the handle's been replaced, is most of these old amps were riveted on, and this one's no exception. We're going to have to remove these rivets, and I think the approach I'm going to take with this one, usually I drill rivets out, and I may end up having to do that with this one as well. But I'm going to try a different approach here, and I'm going to get a sanding drum on a Dremel and see if I can just sand the back side of each of these rivets off. We'll see how that goes. This will be a new technique for me. I haven't tried that before, but it seems to me with the way that these are on here, that might be the way to go. Well, there's one down. That was easy enough. Now let's repeat the process for the other three. All right. So yeah, that was easy as pie. That took less than 2 minutes for all 4 of those. Real easy. Okay, so that worked out rather well. Went by very quickly and looks good. Nice looking handle. Not exactly the same as the riveted ones, but these will work just as well. One final thing we need to turn our attention to are the feet. The feet on this side of the cabinet are okay. They're really worn and beat up, but they're still there. On the other hand, the ones on this side, all that's left is the nail that used to hold the feet in. So we're going to put 4 new rubber feet on this thing and make it stand up a little better. Okay, we have our 4 new feet on this thing, 4 nice new rubber feet. And now one last thing we want to do, and I keep saying one last thing because I keep seeing one more thing to do. Some of the disruption that we saw over here on the grill cloth had to do with the missing logo, which I forgot to mention earlier. So we're going to reproduce a logo. Now I actually have a logo from this period off another one of my amplifiers, but we're not going to use this one. I'm going to trace around this one onto this blank material. I'm going to cut out a background and I'm going to apply this logo, which is it's like a 50s recreation logo that a friend of mine from here in Louisville had made. He had a bunch of these made up, and I actually have a whole bunch of these left if any of you Gibson guys still need some of these. I think I bought, I don't even know, it was what, 20 or 30 or something of these from him because he had used all he needed. So I'm going to actually, you know, it's not going to be the right logo, but it's going to be a good looking recreation. So let's go ahead and make this recreation. So I'm going to trace out and cut this material out first, and it's thin enough that I can just use scissors for that, so that's pretty convenient. And that'll just give us something as a logo, and it'll also hide some of these imperfections on this grill cloth. Okay, there's our finished reproduction logo on the bottom. There is our original Gibson logo on the top. Obviously, they are different logos. However, I think our reproduction looks pretty good and is going to look good on this amplifier. Let's go ahead and get the baffle screwed back in. Let's get the chassis screwed back in. Let's get our logo put back on, and then let's finally give this amp a listen. Okay, here we are finally. Our restoration is all completed. I think it looks pretty great. Our logo came out pretty good. It's not perfect. It's not the exact one, but it looks good. Cleaned up the chassis a little bit. Was able to get some buffing compound and get off a lot of the stuff off the front here, which was pretty good. I didn't try to do this because it just take the lettering right off, but I did also fix the other knobs. So we have our 3 knobs back on. Of course, we changed the handle. I haven't tried to clean up the cabinet or anything, so that's pretty much still as is. But it looks great. It looks the part. It's vintage. We're gonna try first of all with an SG. This is a 2010. so that's with the volume at about 4 or so. Let's crank it up a little more and see what if we can get it to break up even more than that. I'm sure we can. Yeah, a little screamer right there, a little screamer. You gotta take this SG with a grain of salt. It really needs strings, and I haven't even set it up or anything. I just now got this on a trade, so it's straight out of the case, and it really needs strings. So take it with a grain of salt, please. Now we're going to crank it pretty much all the way up here. That's with an SG. Actually, let's go ahead and try the tremolo with this SG as well. Back it up a bit. That's with an SG. Let's check it out with
tinny right there. I mean, you can imagine what it would have been like without removing that that tone sucking network. I mean, it just would have been so harsh with it. I think that was what Gibson might have been thinking. They might have been thinking, hey, let's make our amp sound so bad with a Fender guitar that you know, people can't use it with anything else but a you know, a Gibson guitar. So maybe that's what they were thinking. Hell, I don't know. So yeah, that's about, what did I say, about early 1965, Gibson GA5T, otherwise known as the Skylark. If you guys haven't already subscribed to my videos, and I appreciate you sticking around for these really, really long videos like this, please subscribe down below and keep up with future videos, and we'll see y'all later.
Until then, happy painting. God bless, my friend.